The Empire arrived before the sun had fully risen, when the mountains still breathed mist, and the world felt unfinished. From the high ridge, the warrior watched the valley, below slowly fill with movement, dark. Lines of soldiers advancing like a living river of iron. Banners rose one by one, heavy with symbols of conquest, their colors dull in the pale light. The sound came next, the low thunder of marching boots, the creak of armor, the distant commands carried upward by the cold wind. This was not an army meant to fight. It was an army meant to be seen. It announced the end of choices. Below the pass lay the villages, stone, homes pressed against the mountains for shelter, fields carved by generations of patient hands. These people had learned to survive storms, hunger and harsh winters. But empires were different. Empires did not negotiate with the land. They crushed it until it fit their maps. The warrior knew this well. He had seen other valleys fall, watched proud men kneel and call it wisdom. He did not blame them. Survival often demanded silence. But today, silence felt heavier than death. He stood where the path narrowed, where the mountain forced even the mighty to move slowly and in single file. The pass was old, carved by time and blood, and every stone remembered footsteps of traders, pilgrims and fighters long forgotten. His boots were worn thin, his armor scarred and patched, more memory than protection. The sword at his side had once belonged to his father, and before that, his father's father. Its edge was imperfect, but its weight was familiar, balanced not just by metal, but by the stories bound to it. As the army approached, horns sounded deep, confident notes that echoed against the cliffs. The Empire wanted witnesses. They wanted the mountains themselves to know who ruled now. A group of officers rode ahead, their horses restless, nostrils flaring as if sensing the tension in the air. At their center rode the general, a man polished by victories he barely remembered. His armor gleamed too cleanly, untouched by desperation. He raised a hand and the army slowed, then stopped, obedient as a single body. The general dismounted and walked forward, his boots sinking slightly into the gravel. He studied the lone figure blocking the pass, eyebrows lifting in mild surprise, as if encountering an inconvenience rather than a threat. "You stand in the way of history," he said, his voice calm, practiced. "Move aside. No one will remember this moment if you do." The warrior did not answer immediately. He listened, to the wind brushing the cliffs, to the distant clatter of armor, to his own breathing. He thought of the children in the valley, still asleep. He thought of the elders who had taught him that land was not owned, only protected. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, almost gentle. "History remembers what it needs," he said. "I am here to remind it." A murmur rippled through the soldiers. The general's expression tightened, not in anger but in calculation. He gestured, and an aide stepped forward with a small chest. The lid opened to reveal gold, coins stamped with imperial seals, catching the weak morning light. "You are brave," the general said. "Brave men should not be wasted. Take this, serve us. You will have rank land, a name that lives longer than your bones." The warrior looked at the gold, then back at the general. A faint smile crossed his face, not of mockery but of understanding. "You can own land," he said quietly. "Not honor." He stepped forward, planting his feet more firmly into the earth, as if rooting himself to the mountain. The general sighed, a sound of disappointment rather than rage. He raised his hand again, this time sharply. Archers lifted their bows in unison, arrows already notched. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the command fell. The first arrows screamed through the air, dark streaks against the pale sky. The warrior moved, not hurried, not panicked, but precise. He knew the pass, every uneven stone, every narrow ledge. He shifted just enough to let arrows strike rock, sparks flashing as iron met stone. One arrow grazed his arm, drawing blood, warm and real. Pain grounded him. He welcomed it. The soldiers advanced, shields raised, confidence returning as numbers closed the distance. The warrior charged. His shout echoed off the cliffs, multiplied until it sounded like many voices instead of one. The first clash was brutal, metal against metal, bone against stone. He fought not with fury but with purpose, turning the narrow path into a weapon. Soldiers stumbled, tripped by the dead and the wounded, their formation breaking where it mattered most. Time lost its shape. There was only movement and breath. The weight of the sword, the burning in his muscles. He struck, retreated, struck again, using height and shadow, vanishing and reappearing like a force the soldiers could not measure. For every step they gained, they paid in blood. The mountain drank deeply. The general watched from below, his jaw clenched. This was not how empires advanced. This was not how resistance was supposed to look. Orders were shouted, then shouted again, sharper, angrier. More soldiers pushed forward, their confidence thinning, replaced by something unfamiliar, doubt. As the sun climbed higher, the mist burned away, revealing the pass littered with bodies and broken shields. The warrior's armor was cracked, his breath ragged, but he still stood. When another wave came, he met it with a calm that unsettled even himself. He was no longer fighting to win. He was fighting to hold, to delay, to make the cost unforgettable. By late afternoon, the shadows lengthened. The army had stopped advancing, regrouping just out of reach. The pass remained closed, not by walls or gates, but by the will of one man who refused to move. And as the light faded, the empire learned something it had long forgotten. Not every path could be taken, and not every man could be bought. Morning came quietly, as if the mountains themselves were unsure of what they were allowed to witness. The battlefield looked unreal in the pale light, shields scattered like fallen leaves, broken spears resting where hands had dropped them, dark stains soaking into the gravel of the pass. Imperial soldiers moved carefully now, their confidence stripped away by the silence. There was no victorious shout, no trumpet announcing triumph, only cautious footsteps and whispered questions. They expected to find a body. They searched the narrow path first, then the ledges above it, then the ravines below. They found blood, enough to prove the warrior had been wounded, enough to convince them he should not have survived, but they did not find him. No armor, no sword, no sign of where he had gone. It was as if the mountain had opened its stone arms and taken him back. The general arrived after the search had already begun. He dismounted slowly, studying the ground with a look that mixed irritation and unease. He had seen battlefields before. He knew how death announced itself. This place felt different. It felt unfinished. He couldn't have gone far. He said more to himself than to his men. Search again. They did, again and again. Hours passed. Still nothing. By noon the sun stood high, and with it came a new problem. Soldiers refused to advance through the pass. Some claimed the rocks shifted when they stepped forward. Others swore they heard movement above them. The scrape of boots on stone. The faint sound of breathing carried by the wind. Officers dismissed it as fear, but fear is contagious. It spreads faster than courage ever does. By evening, the story had already begun to change. A wounded soldier told another that he had seen the warrior disappear into the shadows like smoke. Another claimed the man had leapt from the cliff and walked away unharmed. By nightfall, the warrior no longer bled. He no longer tired. He became something else, an idea the empire could not surround or defeat. The general ordered a formal declaration of victory. Banners were raised. A message was sent to the capital claiming the pass had been secured. But the army did not move forward. Camps were set instead at a distance, as if the narrow path itself had learned to bite. That night fires burned low. Soldiers sat closer together than usual, voices hushed. They spoke of home. They spoke of battles they understood, ones with clear enemies and clear endings. And always, the conversation returned to the same question. Where had the warrior gone? Some said he was watching them even now. Days passed. Scouts were sent ahead and returned quickly, shaken and pale. Nothing attacked them. Nothing followed them. Yet none were willing to swear they had been alone. Horses refused to move forward. Supply lines slowed. The mountain had become a presence, and at its heart stood the memory of one man. The general argued with his advisers. To remain was to appear weak. To advance was to invite disaster. Empires thrived on momentum, on the belief that resistance was pointless. Here that belief had cracked. Reluctantly, a decision was made. The army would take a longer route through lower ground, losing weeks but preserving morale. Officially, it was a strategic choice. Unofficially, it was surrender to a ghost. When the army finally moved away from the pass, the valley below exhaled. Villagers emerged slowly, unsure whether to celebrate or mourn. They found the signs of battle, the cost paid on their behalf. They left offerings where the warrior had stood. Water, bread, simple tokens of gratitude. No one claimed to know his fate. Some believed he had died, and the mountain hid him out of respect. Others believed he still walked the high paths, guarding the land in silence. Years turned into decades. The empire weakened, as all empires do. New rulers replaced old ones. Borders shifted. Maps were redrawn by hands that had never touched the mountains. Yet one detail remained unchanged. No imperial road ever cut through that pass. Merchants avoided it. Soldiers avoided it. Even travelers spoke of it with care, lowering their voices as they passed nearby. The story survived not in books, but in voices. Fathers told it to sons beside firelight. Mothers whispered it as a lesson about dignity. Elders spoke of the warrior not as a man who won, but as a man who refused. Refused to kneel. Refused to trade honor for comfort. Refused to accept that power alone decided truth. Over time, his name faded. Details blurred. Some said he was young. Others swore he was already old. His weapon changed. His wounds disappeared. But the meaning of his stand grew sharper with every telling. He was proof that defiance did not need permission. That courage did not require numbers. Travelers claimed that on certain mornings, when the fog rolled in just right, a lone figure could be seen standing at the narrowest point of the pass. They said he never moved, never spoke, only watched. Whether this was imagination or something more, no one dared to test it. The empire became history. The mountains remained. And somewhere between stone and story, the warrior lived on, not as a conqueror, not as a king, but as a reminder that even the greatest forces in the world depend on belief, and belief can be broken by a single unyielding soul. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more untold legends and powerful stories.